Hey, welcome to the Circle of Love discussion group. Today we are Stephanie and myself, Sissel from Earth side, and we will see who will come through from the heaven side to answer some questions and things we want to know.
Thanks, Sissel. It's been interesting lately because we've covered so many topics and so many things. I think life is kind of like a musical scale. You have the physical component, you have the emotional, you have the psychological, you have the intellectual, and you have the spiritual. So there's like 5 bars on this scale. And then you can play life up and down the scale. So you can't ignore any part of it. And we have covered so many topics with the circle. And now we've really been focusing on ancient history and issues related to it. And to me, it's fascinating. And I assume at some point we're going to get more into science, more into issues that are relevant to us scientifically with climate change, things like that. Maybe astrology, astronomy. But right now, our focus seems to be on some of these ancient mysteries that are so hard for us to parse out because the mythology is one thing and it differs around the planet. And as explained in our last video, as Thomas explains it in the last couple, actually, everything starts at a point. You could say we say it starts with love, but love has many, many faces. It starts with God, the one undivided God energy that spreads throughout all the universe through the process of duality and creates all this spectacular experience that we call life. But it all starts at the same point. So it has to integrate, it has to synergize. So from the same point, all these mythologies all over the world have spread up through humanity because humanity started at one peak point. And their mythology started there because of the stories that are passed down. And they may vary from different parts of the world because certain parts will be emphasized, certain parts will be remembered, certain parts will change with the generations, but it all starts at one point. So I just wanted to say that it has to fit together because it starts at one point.
Yeah, and
So anyway,
it is very interesting because the religions, the belief systems, the everything plays their own role, and the more I learn, the more it combines into an understanding that it doesn't differ so much. Like I can see this strain is going that way, another strain is going that way, but to summarize, it starts from the same point, as you say. The more I look into it, the more interesting it is to see, and the more I understand the symbolism and the statues and the stories the different tribes are telling, or the stories of the religions are telling. So everything combines more and more the more I look and explore it. So it's very interesting.
it is. And the more pieces we get, even from the other side, because they're relying on their memories. And even if they go to the Akashic records to look back at their past, they're going to see the movie playing out, but through their own peepers as they remembered it. Just like when we go back into our memory, it's how we remember it. And we have to talk to other people to see how they remembered it, the same incident, to form the whole picture. Just like today, when we go through life and we see things and we filter it through our own peepers, and we need to see how other people see it.
It's like a family can discuss a memory, and each member has their own story of what happened.
Right. But it always synchronizes, doesn't it? It always, if we have a question, if something doesn't make sense to us, we just say, this doesn't make sense to us. And sometimes it could be a misunderstanding that somebody misunderstood something that somebody else said, or, they just didn't understand what they were seeing. And someone else will come in and say, yeah, that's not quite right. And here's why you got it wrong. Da, 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 da.
Yes.
And then it's like, okay, that makes sense. It's not just that you got it wrong. It's like, there's nothing wrong with you and the way you see things. It's just that you didn't know this and this and this, or you heard this wrong, or you could only see a part of the picture, or
Mm.
whatever.
Yeah,
Or you're missing one of the puzzle pieces is under the table and you can't, and you don't know why the puzzle won't go together.
exactly. Exactly.
So let's see. Okay, so what was your question then?
I want to hear if they have more to add on the Eastern Island that we talked about yesterday.
Additional information about that and the colonization, you might say, of Easter Island is underway because we're looking into the past history and we'll get back to you on that. But right now, we don't have
Okay.
anything definitive to add to the story of the rise and fall of the civilization on Easter Island.
Okay.
So it is essentially the summary of what happened there that we gave you in our last session.
Mm. I've been interested in symbols that I used, like the Ankh, the cross, the star, and all those used in different religions and different hieroglyph that we see. Can you talk about them? When did they emerge? When did they come? And what was the reason for them to be here? Like the Ankh.
A big subject because, of course, symbology can have many inspirations in order to explain to humanity what's going on. Our language is symbolic, you might say. And so when we speak and we say tree, it is a representation of a concept that will translate to you in a way that you will say, okay, I know what a tree is.
Mm.
And so it's a symbol. So many languages arose and many written forms of language arose, and some of them were symbols. And that's interesting because we looked into this yesterday after our discussion about Easter Island. Steph did some research because she was curious because she didn't have a lot of her own personal knowledge about it to rely upon. And she came across something that said that there was some mysterious glyph kind of like hieroglyphics, but not quite because they were symbols that were carved into various artifacts. And the question is, how did they come to have this particular symbology on Easter Island, which was occupied in recent history, that is to say, in the last couple thousand years, in a way that would say that they didn't have access to written languages because of the belief that Easter Island was colonized actually by Polynesians who traveled that way. However, there is a tradition that says that this is not entirely true. That Easter Island had a crew of people who originated in the Mediterranean Sea islands who began to become seafaring people that traveled far and wide, and they would go from one landmass to another through the years, and they would bear a certain culture with them, and they would seek to maintain that culture by trading with their neighbors who had also originated in the same area because there was a lot of turmoil in that area at one time. There was a lot of invasions from the north, and people were afraid of having their cultures destroyed and their societies destroyed by invading forces. And so they began to take to sea to look for safer places to experience life. So there's a tradition that says that there was a group of these who had come from the seas of the north, they're Atlantic, who eventually found their way around the tip of South America and through the Magellan Strait, and eventually came across Easter Island and brought what they could of their culture with them. And although they might not have retained the ability to access the language that had once flourished in their history, they still understood the concept of the written language. And they began to devise their own symbols that would allow them to leave a written record for those who could decipher them. And so their culture developed in a unique way because it was so cut off from the other home bases of the races who had spread far and wide across the earth at that time. Now, as to some of these specific symbols, the circle is pretty obvious, and it is so clear that it represents the cyclical nature of reality. And that is something we need to mention here because we were talking about that yesterday with Steph, that these seafaring people that we were talking about who had been going around the world in their little boats that would float, because they also used a system of outrigging that would maintain some stability of their sea-going craft, were not confused about the earth being round. They knew instinctively that the earth was round because they had traveled far and wide on the oceans, you see, and they understood that they had never come to a place where the oceans rushed off a cliff as they would if the world were flat. And they knew that was silly because then all the water would fall off the face of the earth and there would be nothing left. So they understood the curvature of the earth and that the seas connected. And so they weren't so stupid as you think they were. There's a lot of people here who are still flat earthers because they trust on a beginning and an end. They cannot trust on the alpha and the omega. The alpha and the omega is the trust that the beginning is always swallowed by the end, that you will always go around. This doesn't mean it will always be Groundhog Day, because every time you go around the earth, it's going to be a little different, you see? Because you can't stop the evolution or the rotation of the God energy. It continues to rotate and continues to evolve both. And that is the duality, that it will never be the same and it will always come back to the beginning again. But you can go around the block and you can say, well, I came back to where I started, but you didn't, because you're not the same one that started out, you see? You're not the same one that started out around the block, because by the time you get back around the block, you've changed, you've evolved in a certain way, and you will continue to evolve. If you go around the block every day, one day you'll wake up and say, wait, I am twice as tall as I used to be when I started walking around the block. So you see, you're constantly evolving, you're constantly rotating through your lives, you're constantly doing this, you're constantly doing that. And the idea of a flat world is the idea that one day it'll all be over, you see. One day all the oceans will fall off the edge and you will die of dehydration. And that is not the nature of God energy. So the circle is fairly early easy to comprehend. And it is also the symbol of zero, which is, we've said before, represents wholeness, and it also represents nothing, because nothing is the resting place of everything.
Mm.
It is the uncut pie, you might say, that can be cut into pieces, and you can get this and that and the other, which, while we're on the subject, is interesting because, of course, pie has no end, you see,
Mm.
because the pie will can be cut again and again and again, and like the fishes and the loaves, you'll never run out of enough to feed you. You see, that is the nature of eternity. So these symbols have an ancient history, and that ancient history is like saying that every time you go around the block, you come around back to the beginning, because the ancient symbols pop up again and again and again. And you say, oh, this is where this symbol began. And then you take a walk around the block and you see that that symbol appears everywhere you go. And you get back to the beginning and you say, well, this was my beginning. This is where I started walking around the block. But my neighbor starts walking around the block at a different point, you see, because he has a different reality. And yet the symbols will still be there and they will still speak to him. He'll still go around the block and he will still come back to his beginning, but his beginning might be a little bit different than mine. And that is part of the wonder of life, you see. And that is what the circle represents, that you never get to the bottom of the pie. It will just keep feeding you over and over and over again. Now, let's look at a different symbol. The symbol of the star is the symbol of the car that carries you through life, you see. It's like saying the star is the symbol of your physical reality. And so when you wear the Star of David, you are wearing the star of the car that you're driving, you see. So you're driving in the car of David. And if you wear the star of a particular theology, then that's the car in which you're driving around the world. And you try to see everything from the window of your car. And you say, well, this looks like this today because your car has tinted windows, you see. And so you might say that the star represents the particular way that you filter your reality. And so if you were to take a star and place it on your car and say, hey, this is the star that carries me to the farthest reaches of reality, it would kind of be like saying that you wish upon a star. You wish that you will go far in your car that you trust upon. So everybody has a car that they trust upon because they've built it through their own trust on their own experience, you see. And some people say, well, I don't trust on that car. I don't trust on that star. I'm not one of the ones that trusts on this particular theology or this particular programming. I don't like it, you see. So I'm going to go find some other star that I will trust upon. And this is the nature of the star, that when you look up in the sky and you make a wish upon a star, you are trusting that your car will take you far. And so over time, the star has come to represent the little lights in the sky, you see? Because the little lights in the sky are the ones that light your way. They lighted the way of those who took to the sea and trusted that they wouldn't fall off the edge, you see. They trusted on their star, that their star would take them far. And so your little car that you get in and pedal around the block is the one that you trust upon to help you see another view of the world you thought you knew. Because you will keep following your star and you will keep going farther and farther into the reaches of the breaches of the trust on God energy. Because God energy is not a star, you see. So when you wish upon that star, you're wishing upon your own philosophy. You're not trusting on God energy. God energy is more akin to the symbol of the sun that rises every day and shines upon you and allows you to get in your car and drive far and always have your way lighted, you see? So the sun represents God energy that causes you to grow, to survive, to thrive. And it is necessary for the entire planetary system to thrive, you see? So God, the sun, is the trust on the one that created all of the universe, you see. Even though every star is a sun, because if you follow your star far enough, you'll come to find that it is the sun that always was guiding you and not the star. You see? Mm-hmm. Now, the symbol of the cross is also very easy because the cross you see where the two lines cross is the point at which reality is created, you see, because it is the trust on the physical and the spiritual. And they come together where the two lines cross in that one point, you see? And so when you think of the cross, many people think of the crucifixion of Jesus and perhaps others, and they don't understand that the symbol is the symbol of what you do to those who always knew about the trust on reality. So Jesus knew about the trust on reality. He trusted on the cross, you see. And the people who did not understand the value of what he was telling them trusted upon the cross too. But they trusted upon it as a vehicle of punishment and not a vehicle of transition, you see. And so Jesus had to die on the cross because he had to be the one who would see that he was transitioning into a new reality. Because he trusted on God, you see. And so God came to Jesus and said, hey, it's okay, baby, because now I'm going to give you another chance at reality because those stupid fools had no clue of what they did do. Because what they did do, you see, was open up a new reality. Because when they try to punish you in the way that they do, they only set you free. They only set you free. Because if you're the one they punish by killing you, they set you free to be with me. And we can plan out a new reality. And so God said to Jesus, let's plan out a new reality. I'm sending you back to earth, you see. And you'll wake up and you'll go talk to some other people in far-flung places, and they will come to see that you're pretty smart, you see. And so that's what happened. Jesus went and talked to a lot of people in a lot of places. And the ones who trusted on the cross as a means of punishment never came to understand the story. They never came to see that Jesus went through the portal between the physical and the non-physical and came back, you see. Jesus was renewed in his energy because he died and was resurrected, just as many people are today. We call that a near-death experience, but it's not a near-death experience, it's a death experience. When God says, I'm going to send you back the same way you came to me, I'm going to send you through the cross between the physical and the non-physical. And have a good time, honey. Have a good time because I love you. And those people who go back through the portal say, God loves me today and I love reality. And they go around and they tell people they got it all wrong. They tell people, we're not afraid of dying. You guys got it all wrong. Because we heard the song that said to us, hey, I love you true. I really do. And I'm going to let you be the one who helps me to raise the vibration on earth, you see. So Jesus raised the vibration on earth because he came back and he traveled far and wide, and he talked to the people in different places around the world. And the ones who call themselves Christians today are the ones that need to be reminded that they are the pagans, you see. They still trust on the creator gods, they still trust on the Anunnaki. But they had to be tricked, you see, by the ones who think they have to punish others in order to stand on their heads and reach heaven, you see. But Jesus was free. And the people who listened to Jesus were free. And the ones who listened to the Pope were captured in the dark energy of the minds, you see, where they would have to believe that the only way to relieve their pain and suffering was to punish others, you see. And that is the sad story of the Roman Catholic Church and all the Christian churches that arose in its wake, because they were not awake to the truth of the cross. You see, that it is the trust on the physical and the non-physical reality. Now, as to the Ankh, how do you say it there?
Ankh?
You say Ankh?
Yeah.
How do you guys say it? Ankh. Is that how you say it? Yes, they say Ankh. This is the symbol of the cross and the circle, you see? That the sun is the circle and the cross is the trust on the reality of love, you see? Because love is what you find when you find the portal that is at the place where the two lines connect, you see? So now we will talk to you about the symbol of humanity. So there are two symbols that we're going to talk about right now, and they represent the male and female energy, you see? And the one symbol is the symbol of the thrust of God energy that came to Earth in a trust on giving humanity a little boost of energy so that it could live in peace and harmony. And this symbol is a circle with a little arrow pointing down. And this is the symbol of the male energy, you see? And the female energy is represented by a circle and a cross, kind of like the same symbol that we talked about. That it is the cross between the physical and the non-physical and the God energy, because it is through the God energy that the human biology is created in a way that will synergize the physical and the non-physical. You see? Does this make sense to you?
Yes, it does. Never thought of it.
What other symbols are you curious about?
The symbol that goes around in Peru, which is like I don't know what it's called.
Can you put on the whiteboard a picture of it? And we can take a break, but just see if you can find it on the internet and stick it on the whiteboard.
I'll try.
Hey, we took a little break to find the symbol that Sissel is talking about. We're going to flash it up here so that you can understand what it is. So I will insert a copy of it. It's not something I was familiar with, but we were able to locate it. Steve says, this is an important symbol because it is the trust on the corners of the universe, you might say. So there are 4 aspects, and they are each interspersed with another 4. So if you were to stand above the earth, you would unearth a trust on the 4 major divisions of the earth. So we could say the 4 quarters of the earth. So imagine an orange and you're looking down at it, and you would divide it into quarters. So there would be 4 quarters that you could cut it into, or an apple. And so you cut an apple into quarters, right? However, when you take the devil's point of view, shall we say, there are 4 other directions you can go. And those 4 other directions are all below the world you know, because they represent the antagonistic tribes of reality that will try to confuse you and cause you to trust on being neither here nor there. They will cause you to lose your good vibration on love, you see, because they will try to say, hey, you got it all wrong. You got it all wrong. This is not how God intended it to be. God intended it to be this way. And so let us suppose that you had a good vibration on building a particular habitation that would reflect the 4 quarters of the earth, you see, and you build your habitation in accordance therewith. And so it would be essentially a square, you see, that would reflect a trust on the north and the south and the east and the west. However, someone would come in and say, you have this misaligned, you see, it needs to be this way. And so you would have to rotate your house to comply with the dictates of the society in which you live, and not the natural order of life, you see. So it represents the natural order of life, what you might say, the way God does harmonize everything. And the square, you could think of it like, hold it up again, like two squares over each other, you see? And so the main points are the natural order, and the square that's laid over it, you see, is the trust on your programming. It is like saying that you trust on that star, you see, that is your car, that you have to do it a certain way. You have to live life the way they tell you to. And so these two aspects of reality, the human experience that exists as an overlay over the natural world, create this sort of interplay of the two squares, you might say. The hole in the middle is, as always, the fulcrum or the axle that allows the whole thing to turn, you see? So that God energy is always in control. And so no matter whether you drive in your car according to your pet star, or you trust on the natural order and allow peace and harmony to prevail in the world around you, and don't trust on the programming of your particular society or your particular religion or your particular philosophy, it will still all be controlled by God, you see. So even though you go astray, you might say, God still has it in control. God is still the one that makes it all turn, you see. So once upon a time, this represented the turning of the universe, you see, around the center of reality. And the center of reality is always you and me. So you're always the center of your reality. And everybody else is the center of their reality. So when you wear that particular symbol on your shirt, you see, it signifies that you are the center of your reality and you understand that you are an aspect of God energy. And therefore, everybody else you meet is the center of their reality and the center of God energy. And in some places, they would say, the God in me sees the God in you. That whether or not it comes through as a social requirement or socially acceptable point of view, or is just the trust on the instinctive nature of the animals, it is still God energy. It's all God energy. And it all is turning in accordance with the hole in the middle, which again is the circle that represents the totality of reality or God in humanity. So God exists in humanity. So there is a hole inside of you through which God sticks his finger and twirls your reality. Does this make sense to you?
Yeah, that was very interesting. Never heard that explanation, but it's, yeah, I like it. Makes sense.
What other symbols have grabbed your attention?
Um, the Islam, I think, uses the moon and the star. So what is the moon?
The moon is the false star. And that's it. The moon is the false star. People from ancient times thought that the moon shone by its own light. It does not shine by its own light. It is the reflection of the light, you see, that comes from God and is perpetrated throughout of all of reality. And so if you trust on the moon and not the sunshine that falls on you, then you are following a false star, you see. So it's a false religion or a false philosophy or a false ideology. And that is what it means.
Wow. Interesting. Very interesting.
That is interesting. Why would they have a symbol like that?
Yes.
They adopted it because there was someone who created that symbology to reflect the error in their methodology. And they thought it was kind of cute because they were so stupid they didn't understand what was being portrayed.
So we choose always the correct one, you might say, intuitively.
We do. And if you look at the flag of the United States, you see all those stars because it represents all the different realities that were combined in order to create one country, you see. It is like saying it's okay which star you're following, as long as you allow others equal opportunity to follow theirs.
Very interesting.
It is very interesting how flags are created because they are created like many, many symbols from the deep consciousness of ultimate reality.
You have explained before the symbol of the Medusa, or what is called, the symbol that the medicine uses with the snake.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have talked about it before, but maybe you can
Right.
elaborate.
This symbol is ancient, of course, and it is the symbol of destructive energy. And so, of course, it is rather interesting that it has been adopted in so many medical contexts, and it represents the destructive energy of trying to control reality from only one stake in the ground, you see. It's not a cross, it's a single stake or staff that is where the ones who trusted on reality were destroyed because they refused to allow others to control them, you see. And so the medical profession has gained so much control over the lives of humanity that it is a very, very destructive energy. We're not here suggesting that anyone should not trust upon their doctor's advice or that anyone should forego vaccinations. That's not what we're saying here. What we're saying is that the programming of humanity is such that it now trusts upon a reality that is as false as the moon, you see. And therefore, if you trust upon it, if you trust the moon to guide you, then by all means, follow the moon to guide you, because the moon does provide some light. However, it's not the source of the light, you see. The source of the light is God energy. And if medicine has the ability to reflect some of that light to those who are in the dark, then good for it. However, it is not the light, you see. It is only the reflected light. So the answer is to find the source of the light. And so we call this East of Eden, and it's the name of the new book. When we say East of Eden, it means that you never quite reach the sunrise. You're running as fast as you can to catch up with the sunrise, but you just can't catch it, you see, because it's moving ahead of you around the world. Because you don't understand that all you have to do is stand still and the sun will rise on you, the night will pass. So you keep chasing the sun because what you're really doing is trusting on the moon, you see, to guide you. And you're trusting on a flat earth, that if you run fast enough, you'll catch up to it, but it never occurs to you to stand still and let it reach you. So stand still and let God energy shine on you. Or keep chasing the sunrise that you will never reach because you can't trust on it, you see. If you see the sunrise in the distance, you slow down your pace because you can't face the day that you have to say, God, I was a fool. God, I was a fool. Thank you for knocking me on the head and waking me up. Thank you, God. I was such a fool that I kept chasing the sunrise and never standing still and saying, hey, I'll wait for you to shine on me. You see?
Yes.
We say it's always about chasing the sunrise because that's the best way we can say it. However, when you're east of Eden, you're always chasing the day. You're always chasing the sun and living in the dark, you see. Eden is the fullness of the day when God shines on you. And you say, thank you, God. What a beautiful day. What a beautiful day. What a beautiful world. Thank you for sharing this wonder with me. I wonder why others can't see what I can see.
That was beautiful. Very, very interesting. I like this. I don't have more symbols, do you?
I'm not thinking of any. You got any more?
No, not that I can think of. You have the flower of life, but that is more the symbol of creation of consciousness, as they say.
Yes. The flower of life is the opening through which you are transported into the new reality. So the flower of life is the symbol of the opening of the flower when you stand still and let the sun come to you. And then you open like a flower, you see? But as long as you're chasing the sun, you can't ever open. to the beauty that you are, because you are a child of God, you see. And God is waiting for you to stand still and let Him shine on you.
Thank you, Steve.
What?
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome. And let's close for today so Steph can get back to work on the book that we're about ready to publish. If she'll just finish it up, I have to keep bonking her on the head. And today I had to give her the opportunity to relay to me the lovely advice that all I have to do is stand still and let the sun shine on me. I don't have to keep chasing the day because I'm afraid of the night. You see, I can just stand still in the night and wait for the light to shine on me.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. This
You're
was
welcome. Thank you for all those good questions. That's a very interesting topic, symbols. And I think it's wonderful to discuss that. And of course, as you know, ultimate reality is just you can't represent it adequately with symbols to somebody who's not had the experience that you've had. You know, we've talked about that you and I have had experiences that we couldn't talk to about with anyone. They couldn't understand it. And yet when I talk to you, it's like, okay, I understand what you're talking about, because there's a certain sense of, I get that. I get that. I get the sense, essence of it. And even though every one of those experiences may be different in their circumstances in which you experience them, because all of life is kind of like a unique experience of the symbols of ultimate reality, it's still interesting that you just can't explain it to somebody until they stand still and let the light shine on them. Right?
No, yeah, you have to experience what it is.
Right.
Because this cannot be understood by the mind.
Right.
This is an inner experience.
Right. And if you trust on the moon, you know, and have to stay in the night so that you can trust on the moon, you'll never understand the sun. So stand still, people, and let the sun shine on you. Let the sun reach you.
Yeah.
And the sun, of course, is also the SON, because the sun represents. Can you guys explain that? I think it represents, my understanding is it represents the nature of God energy, which flows through everything, and is therefore the Son of God is the physical expression of it.
Yeah.
Would that be accurate, guys, or how would you describe it? Robert is here to address that question, and because I'm your son, I think it's appropriate that I be the one to talk about it. So the sun is the trust on everyone. The sun is the trust that God energy flows through every one of us. And none of us is denied our place in the sun, you see, when we trust on God. When we trust on God, every one of the children of the light are entitled to the same bit of sunshine. And this also is another little reason I wanted to address this, because my name was Sanjay, and when I was in daycare, the other kids couldn't pronounce it, so they called me Sunshine.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's sweet.
So thank you for letting me share this little bit that makes me smile.
Yeah. Perfect name.
We'll talk to all of you later. All of you that are listening, hope you get a little more clarity from this in your own lives and your own symbols, the symbols that matter to you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.